This episode is brought to you by the RVA Podcast Network. Find more information at rvapodcast.org.
We do not own the rights to anything or any music that's heard during the duration of this podcast. Also, a lot of these shows will have explicit content. So if you are not a fan of any cursing or profanity, you may want to walk away, but that does not mean that every show will consist of such. Finally, this is the podcast every day in August. I almost messed up in saying April, but because I love this platform and I'm a creative, we are here to do what we do, and that is create content. So if you are not a follower or not a listener, please check me out on all podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Buzzsprout, Acast, Overcast, Stitcher, every podcast platform you can think of. This podcast is there. Continue listening. And this is The Past BT with your host, Brian, aka BT. Hey y'all, what's good? Episode 290 of The Past is here. I'm your host, BT. I had to really think back because I got a topic that I was going to do, and then I shifted because I want to get my thoughts clear and concise on what I want to share in that other topic. So I'm going to save that and pocket it for that show or that moment when it occurs. It could be tomorrow. It could be later on this week. It could be the end of the month. I don't know. But right now, I promise that I wanted to update you all on the profile on giving. I want to give some context or some content that will really help a lot of people who are aspiring or thinking of doing podcasting. I've done a similar show like this, but a lot has changed since then. Platforms have realigned. The process to doing podcasts are a lot easier. And I want to make sure I give the resources without assuming that podcasting is very expensive, because that's a misconceived notion about podcasting that I want to get clear before I go any further into this. Now, I will tell you in advance, when I started it and did everything a little backwards. When I first started recording, I was never that podcaster whose goal was to get on iTunes. If I made iTunes, cool. If not, it wasn't a big deal. The reason why is because everyone doesn't have an iPhone. So why would I be pressed to get on the Apple podcast platform? I was looking at, Spotify wasn't even doing podcasting at that time. I think iHeartRadio was on its come up. I was trying to hit those small apps to make sure that if you played or looked for my show, it would come up. Now, fast forward to now, it's kind of distributed naturally with no big conflicts or concerns. Now, of course, I'm on a different platform, and I've also learned the podcast flow from a whole different angle. So I want to make sure I give as much insight and as much input as I can on helping people who really are looking to podcasts. The first tip that I always tell people who are really looking to podcasts, and this is going to sound really silly, but I always share it, is get accustomed to drinking water. Now, let me go ahead and get this off the table first and foremost and get it out the way. If you want to drink alcohol, if you want to drink tea, if you want to drink any juices, you are more than welcome to take those options. And I'm not going to stop you. I can't give you any pushback on those resources, because they are alternatives to some form of avoiding to keep your mouth dry while talking. People don't realize this, and this is minutia, but it's relevant, because I didn't know this information at the time when I first was sharing this about podcasting, and when I would tell people about water. The average person speaks at about 125 words a minute, give or take. Now, that's going to sound weird to some people, because you're going to think, well, how is that possible? But if you really go back and you think of conversations that you've had, now, granted, I'm talking to you all right now at a very steady flow of a conversation. But there are points that I can talk really fast and get a message across, and you might understand what I'm saying, but it might be a little too fast for those of you who are not speaking at that rate. Now, I just want to try that, and you saw I struggled, but I wanted to make my point clear in doing that. There are going to be those points and times where you will talk at a faster rate and get a message across quicker to the recipient that you're talking to. I say all of that to say, while talking or doing podcasting, it is important to realize that you want to stay hydrated. The preferred method that I give people for staying hydrated is to drink water. Now, let's be 100% clear, and I am not going to be one to be fake about it. Have I done podcasts that were not sober? Absolutely. And I'm not giving that in a negative tone, but I'm giving that in a very realistic approach, because when you're with friends and when you're in certain environments, it's just what it is. But it's not with that malice or that mindset. So I give you that information, but I do want it to be clear. If you are able to, water is a very good approach. So you got your water. Cool. Now comes the $1 million question that everybody always figures out. What's the best program to use? What's the best microphone to use? All of that stuff. Now, like I said earlier, my podcast is on Buzzsprout. It used to be on Spreaker. I liked Spreaker. The reason I released my podcast from Spreaker, which was not a negative thing, was the automated ad roll was a lot for me, because I didn't want someone starting off a show getting a 30-second ad that they may not even want to hear when you're coming to hear the content of the show. And that was just a personal preference. But I also understand too, if you're trying to do podcasting, it's all about sponsorships. It's all about monetary, all of those things. So even with Anchor, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, they give you that option on, if you're trying to get a sponsorship, to promote their company and give you kind of some simple steps on what to say, how to get your message out there. So, like I said, the hardware or the device you use to record on is totally up to you. If you want to use a Windows PC, any device that has some form of recording ability, whether that's a built-in microphone or it has a USB port or a way to connect a USB port to record, is completely fine. That's the first thing I would tell you, is to get the hardware to record. The hardware to handle whatever it is you're going to record. Now, like I said, the title says for cheap. So I'm not sitting here telling you run out and buy the most expensive laptop just to record a podcast, because there are alternatives to starting a podcast. The number one way that a podcast can be started, and a lot of people don't realize this, is with your phone. And this is not just with iPhone. This is with any phone that has a built-in microphone. So if you have a Droid, if you have a Galaxy, if you have a Pixel, it does not matter. If it has a microphone on it and you're in a sound and serene place that doesn't have a lot of background noise, you can record a podcast. I want to make this very clear to people, because it's a misconceived notion, or it's an assumed process, that you need this high-end quality or high quality audio software, and you need the biggest and baddest microphone, or you need a mix amp, and you do not need all of that. And I'm giving you this information to people because, like I said, I've told this story on the show before, and I want to tell people again. When I did my first recording back when I was on Spreaker, I literally opened up the Spreaker program through the web-based version of Spreaker, hit record, had a microphone connected to my computer, only to realize that the entire audio was recorded from my laptop's microphone. And it happens. It's not something that I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the worst show ever. Because the interesting part is I don't even remember if I still have that audio, because those were what I consider to be my lost files of my podcast. But that's neither here nor there. you can start off with a phone to record a podcast. Download the Anchor app, follow the instructions. That's the easiest way to start off with the recording factor. Now, if you don't want to use a phone and you want to actually use a microphone, there are different directions that people go or different options. Because the title says for cheap, I'm going to give you the lighter version that I found to work. And I have the mic, but I'm not recording from it now because, like I said, I've been recording now for almost 5 years, if not longer. I want to say I started like 2015, solid recording in 2016. I was getting more into my groove of just recording and getting down to it. The simplest microphone that I found is the Samson Meteor. If you can find any Samson microphone, period, it does everything that you need and then some. You don't need a microphone that has different recording patterns for different purposes. It's not that serious. Heck, if you really wanted to go into that point, you can even go all out and just buy and a lot of people don't really think of using it, but I've heard it's not a bad microphone. The Blue Yeti Nano. The Blue Yeti Nano is pretty inexpensive. I think it might be $100 or a little less. But you also look at it like this, and this is what I tell people because it's a general rule of thumb. Anyone that sees me will always confirm this. My microphone is going to be in a case, period, point blank. When I was carrying it, my Samson Meteor that I would have, the Meteor had its own little packaging setup. So when I carried it, a lot of people would look at that and be like, well, what's that? I'm like, oh, that's my mic. And my full equipment setup would be, if I needed to, I had my microphone stand. I had my microphone stand. I had the mic itself, and I had my laptop, and that's it. There wasn't a lot that was needed. So with the podcast setup from this extreme, it's no different. You just need a microphone that is going to gather and get your voice at its best point. Now that's, again, if you're going away from the phone option and you're wanting to record into a device or record into a program. Now comes the next point, which is, what program do I use? Again, because I'm looking at the for cheap option, one program that I tell anyone to use starting out and just learning and getting accustomed to recording and hearing your voice and being annoyed at how you sound is Audacity. Audacity is a program that works on both Windows and Mac, and it's free. If you have a Mac, you already have GarageBand, and GarageBand does a pretty good job. But if you have a Windows computer and it doesn't have like a default program that can record audio, a good audio recording program I would tell people to use right away is Audacity. And like I said, it then just comes down to you finding a program or a place to house your shows. For the inexpensive option of free 99 and not having to pay a single dime, Anchor is the app to use, and that's the app that I've told most people about using starting off for podcasting, because it then puts you in the scope of understanding. If you're first starting out and you don't know if this is really what you want to do, you can just record a couple shows and see if this might be something you like. Maybe I'll give it a try, maybe I won't, and just kind of ride the wave. You know, when I look at my history with podcasting, when I first got into using Spreaker worked great for me because it was a simple platform. At the time, I didn't have to pay a lot to use it. And I think I might have been rocking it free for a minute because my shows didn't go past 30 minutes. Like, I had very simple, quick shows. But then, of course, as time progressed, I got more into it. I got more invested. So I was paying, I think, about $10, $15 a month. But for what I was getting out of that, I got what I needed. I was satisfied. Everything was everything. So it's about finding your lane and finding what works for what you're trying to do with your brand or with your podcast. And I give those pieces of information only to let people know it's there are multiple sources and resources of information on where and how to get your podcast started. The equipment part is not going to be the issue. The content, and I think if nothing else, and I emphasize this to people a lot of times, hitting record and hitting stop is what they care about. When you hit record and you play out your show and you talk and do everything and you hit stop, if you edit or unedited or don't do anything with it, if something on that show is worth hearing, you're going to get the message out of what they shared, if it's worth being shared or being presented. When you want to get technical and get, fancy and start removing background noise, and you want it to be louder, or you're trying to get a mix amp and you want to, hey, this person talks too soft, let me turn them. That's when you get into that next level of recording. But if you're just in a space of, I want to try and give podcasting a shot, the core thing to look at is get a mic that's less than 100, if not 100. If not under, you can get it under 50. And you don't need to buy the most expensive mic. Just buy a microphone that can record, and most importantly, has a headphone jack. And I want to mention this, or make sure I bring this up before I forget. Your headphone jack is going to be important because you want to have an inexpensive pair of headphones. I think I bought some Skull Candy basic headphones, might have been like $10 or $20, to hear your audio when you're talking. Like, anytime I have guests on the show, I know they always look at me weird, like, what are you giving me headphones for? And I'm like, trust me, you want to hear how you sound, because that then gives you the idea of, can they hear what you're saying? Or are you too loud? Because if you got that "are you too loud" part, my bad. But I'm gonna, as I always do, I always tweak my audio. But if your audio, if you do or don't realize how you sound on a show, then that doesn't give you the option, the ability to really measure yourself in the listening form. So I'm gonna do an overview, and then we'll wrap this up, because I could go on. This show specifically could be a 30-minute show about podcasting, about starting a podcast. And I'm saying this only because I can say it from experience. Excuses will delay you on doing the important thing, which is recording. You can record with anything. You just had to be willing to have the content to share everything. Do with that as you will. But I'm gonna give this overview, and then we're gonna wrap up. Drink water. Keep a bottle of water before you even start to do a single show. Like, I should have one right now, but I don't, only because I'm not expecting this to be long. But luckily, I got some tea, so my body is tea in mid recording, and normally I wouldn't, because it's not a good idea. But all of that being said, get a good bottle of water so you can have something to drink to stay hydrated during the show. Find a program, have a computer that has the ability to record. Find a microphone that is not going to break your pocket. And if you do get a microphone and are looking to travel with your podcast or travel with doing your shows, be sure that you have a case to put your microphone in. When I bought my Blue Yeti originally, I had a case for that Blue Yeti. When I got the Yeti X, thankfully the case fits the Yeti X just fine, so I just switched it on over. And find a good program that's going to record. Audacity is a good program. If you're not wanting to go to that extreme, and you just want to start small, just use your phone and record your show. You have a built-in recording program. Most phones have a recording program, and if they don't, download the Anchor app, and it will have everything you need. So that's everything I got for that. I hope this is helpful to someone. If you have any questions about this and you're really trying to get help with doing podcasting, you can reach out to me on any platform, the Past BT. I can also be reached by email at pastpodcastbt@gmail.com. And just just try to just make the step to like pull the trigger, because that's the hardest part, is just actually doing the show. And I've seen people do this. The biggest risk is I'm ready to record, but I'm not ready to record. And so they put themselves in the box instead of actually taking a chance on really showing what they're capable of doing. So that's what I'm giving y'all today. That's the gem I got. Rock with it, make it work, do what you can. And I hope to see y'all on the other side as being a podcaster, because I'm open and welcoming everybody in the community, because us little podcasters got to compete with the Joe Rogans and the Joe Buttons. So that's just what it is. Until next time, y'all, this is the Pat signing out. Peace. Hey, y'all, we made it through another show, man. Hope y'all got through it. Hope y'all learned something, gained some new information, either about myself and or about podcasting. If you're looking to invest in podcasting, I have different ways of giving you the information and the tools to get you to the right direction with podding. I've currently switched from anyone who remembers. I've been on Spreaker for years. I am a newborn in the Buzzsprout community, and I would definitely say it is one of my faves to use. And also, when it comes to audio, you do not need the most expensive microphone. All you need is a microphone that can catch your voice and can gather your words. So with that being said, this is The Pass. I am your host, PT. Hope y'all enjoyed this episode, and we'll be back to do this again next time.